The outer layer membrane.
Maternal means you say you have maternal or paternal, your maternal cousins, paternal cousins. So what do you mean by maternal? Maternal is related to which parent, father or mother?
Mother.
Mother. So yeah, this is a maternal uterine tissue, means this is the mother's tissue, uterine tissue, where this, baby is developed inside. And what is the next one?
Foreign.
Yeah, Korean. There is one more layer called Korean layer, and inside the Korean layer is the chorionic cavity. Okay, and there is an amniotic fluid also in this amniotic cavity that helps, as we have told, that embryo, it helps embryo and protects it from injuries and germs. Okay, and allantois is the connection from where the baby is getting its nutrition, as well as the yolk sac. So allantois is the last of the four membranes to which originates the digestive canal of the embryo. So the embryo gets digestive canal. The food that the embryo takes gets digested through this allantois. So let us see what happens after this. Okay, so now you have seen how it takes place, embryo develops inside and how it gets nourished. So similarly, you can see how the edges of this amniotic folds come together around the stalk of the allantois and the yolk sac and form a tube which leads from the embryo to the placenta. So this is very important, where you can see all the maternal blood vessels and this embryonic blood vessels, umbilical cord. I told you that's how the baby is connected and is being nourished. This connection is through umbilical cord, and you can even see this chorionic villi that are fused into this amniotic and the chorionic membranes and this uterus wall. So all these are well connected, and this is how the baby is protected and nourished inside the uterus. You can see how the baby is. This is the umbilical cord, how it is getting connected, and it contains a very important blood vessel that connects the embryo with the placenta. So that is how it gets connected. If you have got any doubts, please do ask. Could you understand all this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's so natural, now it's not very difficult to understand. So this is how you can see how these blood vessels are getting connected, and a baby, how the embryo develops. You can see a full-term baby right from the third month, first month, 12 weeks, and then these are the different stages. Like here you can see a seed, just like a seed, and now this is developing inside the uterus. We have seen how it has gone, and then the embryo has taken a shape, just coiled shape, like when you eat a chewing gum, and how it is pressed between the teeth, and what do you see? And then these are the various stages how the baby develops and ultimately it becomes into a 90 months or 280 days, you can see a fully grown baby. So pregnancy lasts for 9 months in human beings, and it varies from animals to animals. The longest gestation period, you call it as a gestation period, how many, the total time that takes for a baby to fully develop inside a human body or any mammalian body, we call it as a gestation period. And the human body takes 9 months, and the highest gestation period is of an animal. Which animal do you know which has got the highest gestation period in mammals? Do you know?
I don't know, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, this is your homework which you are supposed to find out and come back to me in the tomorrow's class. And you must have seen that, you know, whenever mother goes for the checkups, doctors keep telling her about the diameter and the size of the head that keeps increasing. So these are all the measurements, you know, from week 1 to 0.6 centimeter to 3 to 1 centimeter. So as the weeks, you can just see that when the baby is 6 weeks old, you can see the diameter of the embryo increases to 3 centimeters and the weight is 1 gram. And when the baby is 10 weeks old, you can see that it is 7.5 centimeters diameter and 30 grams of weight. And when the baby is around 13 weeks, you can see that its circumference increasing to 18 centimeter and weight also increases. So the weight and the circumferences simultaneously increases. And then you see again between 16 to 20 weeks, it is 25 to 30 centimeters and the weight is 200 to 450 grams. And then between 20 to 25 weeks, it's 27 to 35 centimeter. And the weight would be 550 to 800 grams. And between 25 to 29 weeks, again, you can see what is the circumference. Do you see here between 25 to 29 years, Aisha? Weeks.
The weight is
What is the circumference and what is the weight?
30 to 42, 30 to 42 centimeter is the diameter,
Very good.
and the weight is 1100 to 1350 grams.
Okay. And then in 34 to 38 weeks, what is the weight?
Weight is 3200 to 3400 grams.
3200 to 34 grams. That means 3.2 kgs to 3.4 kg. So a well developed healthy baby will weigh around 3.2 to 3.4 kgs when it is completely developed. So can you tell me what is the weight of the baby when it is between 12 to 16 weeks?
100 grams.
Very good. So you have understood how it takes place. So if this is not, you know, then there is some, that is what is checked when the mother is, when the baby is developing inside. And if there is anything if any abnormality, if we find that between 16 to 20 weeks, if the circumference is not between 25 to 30, if it is less or more, or the weight is less or more, then it becomes a matter of concern. So these are the few standard parameters that are followed to check whether the baby is developing thoroughly or not. And then the fetus of an embryo which with certain characters grow and the uterus increases in diameter. Usually at about 9 months, you can see when the baby is 3.2 to 3.4 kgs of weight, you can see that as the diameter increases, the size of the uterus also increases. And the head, it turns to a head of the fetus. Fetus is nothing but baby. It turns toward the opening of the uterus, and that's how the baby struggles, tries, and comes out of the mother's body. You can see how the baby is coming out from the uterus. So at the birth, the head usually comes out first. Sometimes, you know what happens? The feet also may come out first. This makes the delivery more difficult if legs comes out first during the rotation, and the baby, you know, when it is moving inside, certain times it might happen that, you know, instead of head, if the legs are coming out first, it becomes a very difficult birth of the baby. So the childbirth begins with the muscle layers of the uterus starts a rhythmic contraction and relaxation. So these contractions and relaxations are called as the labor pain, when mother feels all the pain because of these contractions. And that's how the baby comes out from the mother's uterus. At first, the muscular activity of the uterus is just strong enough to move the baby slowly towards the vagina. The outer canal of the female reproductive tract This is how you can see how smoothly the baby is coming out, and all these smooth movements are possible only if all the hormones at every stage are released properly. So this is a good sign that the labor is well on its way. If all the hormones are well released and the contractions and the relaxations of the muscles are taken properly, then the baby is pushed into the outer world. And you can see how his umbilical cord is still connected with the placenta of the mother. So this umbilical cord that is leading from the baby to the placenta is tied off and cut by the doctors. That is how the doctors cut it, and they remove the baby from there. And then later, even the placenta has to be pushed out from the body with the same relaxations through these movements, yeah, that also comes out. Then this is usually called as the afterbirth process. And in the last part of the pregnancy, a watery lymph-like fluid called colostrum accumulates in the mammary glands of the mother, and that's how the mother start preparing for feeding baby. And this is called as a very important protective nutrition for the baby, and it has gradually been enlarging and undergoing a transformation, which you see here. And this milk is called as the clostrums, and this beginning first few days milk which baby gets is very important for the newborn baby. It protects the baby from many diseases. The immunity system of the child builds from this. So the umbilical cord leading from the baby to the placenta, it is tied again. It's been repeated. And if you have got any doubts here, please do ask me. And as I told you, after the baby comes out, also the contractions and the relaxations continues till the placenta. This placenta also has to come out. And this comes out after the baby comes out. So now this is how the human we have seen. Now the next one will be the how does this reproduction takes place in the plants, in the flowers. Even that is very interesting. So let us go for that. And before we start with the reproduction in plants, if you have got any doubts, please do ask and get them clarified. So let's start with the reproduction in plants. The plant sizes, that is the trees that is weighing in tons, and the tiny water plants that is the small size of the rice grain. You can see here every plant, there every flower in the plant, it continues with a process called reproduction. And that's how the pollination, there's a process called pollination, fertilization, that takes place to reproduction. Can anybody tell me again what is the other name for reproduction, or what do you mean by reproduction?
Re means it is happening again and again.
Again and again. Yes, very good. So this is reproduction means again and again the same series of organisms are continuing their cycles and growing. So if you look at the sal tree, it grows generally in the Himalayan mountain, we see them. So this is, and as well as the cactus, you must have seen the cactus in the Sahara. These are the one tiny one where the stem gets modified into the thorns, because they are, because of this adaptation takes place because this plant grows in deserts. And if you look at the orchid plants on the branches of a jungle tree, these are all flowering plants. And what happens to this flowering plant is the sal tree, the flowers are called as the reproductive organs of a plant, from where reproduction in the plants takes place. So the reproductive parts of the flowering plants are located in a flower, and this is a typical example of a datura flower. If you all are having datura flowers, are very common, please open that flower, remove the petals, and this all you can see very obviously clearly with your naked eyes also. And some of its ovules and all those parts we can even show you. These slides are available in our lab. Anytime, whenever you visit the school for your notes correction and all, you can go through the slides. You can ask Durga ma'am and see them. So the different parts of the flower are sepals, petals, stamens, and carpels. These are the important one. And draw this flower and label its parts, and please post it into the groups so that we can further, proceed further. Pollination. So these are the, so now you got it that, can somebody repeat and read out what are the male reproductive parts of a flower and what are the female reproductive parts of a flower? Ashas, can you please tell me now?
Yes, ma'am. In the male reproductive flower is called stamens.
Very good.
And in that it is called anther and filament.
Yes.
And in the female reproductive in the flower,
Yes.
that is called carpels.
Carpels, yeah.
Carpels.
Yes.
And in it has stigma, style, ovary.
Yes, very good. And you can see that the female reproductive organs are protected by sepals. Sepals protects the female reproductive organ, and petals protects the male reproductive organs. And this is called as a unit. If it is happening within the same plant, we call it as unisexual. Like example is bottle gourd and papaya. Papaya, bottle gourd kaddu hoga, and papaya mein aap dekhenge generally they are unisexuals. They don't have, both. This is bottle gourd and this is papaya. So flowers having either stamens or carpels are called unisexual, like that of the in bottle gourd and papaya. We see that these flowers only develop into the fruits, and they are called as the unisexual flowers. And the flowers in this datura flower, we see that it is a bisexual, because here both stamens and the carpels are present in the same flower. So datura is a bisexual flower. Yes. So now stamens produced, you have seen that stamens are called as the male reproductive part of a flower, and carpels are the female sex cells, and ovules are present inside the ovaries. And you can just see how these, how do they receive pollen. And stigma, stigma contains a sticky substance, and it has got a chemotactic force of attraction. It attracts pollen towards that sticky substance, and pollen aakar is stigma pe when it it sticks into it, then it dissolves through the chemicals and moves inside the ovary for reproduction. For fertilization, sorry, not reproduction. So one of the passage of compatible male cell set called the style, and the part where the fusion of male and female sex occurs, it is called as a zygote, and it's in the ovary. So you have seen how, this pollen from the style enters into the ovary, and inside the ovary, it fuses with the ovule which is present inside. So the pollen fuses and forms a zygote. And then you have seen how meiosis takes place, the cell division occurs. You'll have the cell division also, and it gives rise to, this fusion gives rise to the zygote in the ovary. And inside the ovary, again, what do we see? and as I told you, the plants that are having male reproductive cells are stamens, and the flowers fertilize, and the female reproductive cells called carpels. In the same, if it is in the same flower, it's happening. I told you it is. Which type of pollination it is? Anybody? If it is taking place in the same flower, we call it which pollination?
Unisexual.
Unisexual is supposing if only either male or female, only one, either carpel or stamens. If it is present, then you call it unisexual. But I'm asking you, a plant like datura, which is bisexual. So if the pollen of the same flower falls into the stigma of that flower only, then which type of this process is called pollination? The transfer of pollen from anthers to the stigma is called pollination. Okay, ये प्रोसेस को हम पॉलिनेशन बोलते हैं, जहां पर एंथर्स में से पोलन निकल के ये फ्लावर के स्टिग्मा में जा रहा है. तो अगर if it is happening in the same flower, then this type of pollination is called as, here you read, it is written here,
Pollination.
self-pollination, because ये plant में हो रहा है. This is happening, very good. This is called as self-pollination. अगर ये कोई दूसरे plant में होगा, तो then we call it which pollination? Supposing if this pollen falls into another flower, into the stigma of some other flower, then what type of pollination will that be?
Bisexual.
Cross-pollination. We call it, this is a bisexual flower only. Because this flower is bisexual, then only you will see both male and female. You know, stamens and carpel. These are the stamens and these are the carpels. अगर ये दोनों एक flower में है, तो you call it bisexual. अगर supposing कोई flower में you see only carpel, okay, stamens are not there, and some flowers will have only stamens, they don't have carpel, then you call them unisexual. But this is a flower where you have got both stamens and carpel, so they are bisexual. But in certain bisexual flowers, though they are bisexual, उसमें self-pollination नहीं होता है. As I told you, supposing if an insect sit on this flower for the nectar, and the pollen of this flower may get stick to the legs of those insects, and these insects fly away and sit on some other flower. And that's how these insects work, as you know, they transport this pollen from one flower to another, and that's how cross-pollination takes place. Self-pollination नहीं होता है, क्योंकि same flower में ही pollination नहीं हो रहा, कोई और flower पे होता है, then we call it cross-pollination. So now, are you all clear what is a unisexual, bisexual, self-pollination and cross-pollination? Is it clear for all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ashas, can you please explain me then the difference between unisexual and bisexual? Yeah, Ashas. Or Aisha, can you?
Self-pollination means
No, I don't want self-pollination. I'm just asking you, what is unisexual and what is bisexual?
Unisexual is where plants have male reproductive system and female reproductive system in them.
Both male and female, then what do you call it?
Unisexual.
Uni means only one, either stamens or carpels. Bisexual means both stamens and carpel, both will be there.
Bisexual.
Yeah. Now the flower which you are seeing now on the screen, is it bisexual or unisexual?
Bisexual.
It is bisexual because you can see both, stamens are also there and carpel is also there. So this is bisexual. And then we'll see the pictures of other unisexuals also. Now, Aisha, can you tell what is now it's clear for you, isn't it? What is unisexual and what is bisexual?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Aisha, can you please tell me what do you understand by self-pollination and cross-pollination?
Self-pollination means that pollination in the same plant.
Within the same flower. Okay, very good. And cross-pollination?
Cross-pollination, that is in another plant.
Yeah, the pollen of this flower may go and fall into some other flower. So then we call it as a cross-pollination. So here you can see how the self-pollination is taking place. The pollen from the anthers of the same flower is falling into the stigma of the same flower. And then this stigma through the style is going inside, and then it will fuse with the ovule, and then a zygote is formed. So let us observe a pollen grain. And to observe a pollen grain, we have got a small activity. We'll take a slide, and upon that slide, we are going to drop a few drops of water. And then we'll take a flower like hibiscus flower. We'll take either hibiscus, tridax, or marigold, or datura, which are commonly found flowers. And then what are we going to do is we are tapping another over the drop of water. So now if you take this hibiscus flower and we are tapping this on the water which we were having from the anthers, and these are the pollen grains. So from the anthers, we have taken few powdery substance, that is the pollen grain, and on the slide where we had a drop of water, we have dropped this pollen over it. And we are taking a permanent slide of pollen grain from we have even got a permanent slide where already we have made a slide of the pollen grain, and then we are making another slide also, and we'll see the difference between the permanent slide under a microscope and the one which we are making. So what do we observe? And then these observations, you have to make a drawing of it, and we have to compare it with the diagram that is given in your textbook. If you can see what you are seeing under the microscope and the diagrams that are given in your textbook, whether they both are same or do you find any difference? This is one of the activities you should do as soon as you come to the school. So you can see how these pollen grains consist of 2 or 3 cells that are surrounded by a protective wall in the angiosperms are falling. And what is the difference between angiosperms and gymnosperms? So can you please find out, do you know what is angiosperm and what is gymnosperms?
No, ma'am.
Can you try look into your angiosperms and gymnosperms? We are talking about gymnosperms. If you see some seeds, they are naked seeds also. Seeds, थोड़े seeds है जिसके ऊपर cover रहता है. And there are certain seeds which are naked, which are not covered by a cover. So gymnosperms are the naked ones, and the angiosperms are the one where the seeds are covered. For if you look at the example like, orange, mango, these fruits, the seeds of these fruits are covered. You can easily remove the cover from the seeds. Have you ever observed the removing the cover from the? अभी एक bean होता है, bean seed. Have you ever seen the bean seeds? That's very common, which you see in your home. when you're cooking that beans. So have you ever seen those bean seeds?
Yes, ma'am.
उसको कुछ cover है seed के ऊपर, वो which can you remove that cover?
Yes, ma'am. There is a cover that.
Yeah,
We
those
have to
seeds have got covers. So you call them angiosperms. थोड़े seeds रहते हैं जिसके ऊपर वो cover नहीं रहता है. So if the cover is not there, we call them as gymnosperms. Okay. So did you get the difference between angiosperms and gymnosperms?
Yes, ma'am.
So naked seeds are gymnosperms and angiosperms are one which are covered. So now let us see how is this happening. How are these becoming into angiosperms? How are these flowers that are converting into fruit becomes angiosperms or gymnosperms? So this is the structure of the ovule. The structure of the ovule is important to convert a seed into either gymnosperms or angiosperms. So the egg-shaped structure attached to the stalk, depending upon the species of the plants, and ovary may have 1, 2, or several hundreds of ovules. It can have as many ovules as they were possible, and you can even see the stalk. So at the center of the ovule is a microscopic embryonic sac filled food and water. Can you see it clearly? So this embryonic sac is filled with a gametophyte, and it consists of 7 cells and 8 nuclei. And it is same in the majority of the flowering plants. So you can see these 8 nuclei you can see inside it. And these are the egg cells, and we call them the other one by the side of the egg cell is called as synergids. And then we see a central cell and antipodals into it. And we have polar nuclei also. So this during fertilization, this is the structure of the ovule. So if you remember the structure of the ovule, you will be able to anticipate whether the seed that would be the fruit that comes out of this ovule, will it be a gymnosperm or an angiosperm? This whether the seed will have a cover on it or will it be a naked one. So you can see how the pollen grains from the male gametophytes that are produced has got an anther splits releasing pollen grains. You can see how, this actually ruptures. It splits. The anther mein aap ye rupturing. If you look at the structure of the anther, it is closed and you can see ek beech mein se isko with the pressure of the air or when it matures, it ruptures. And the pollen is released from this by this rupturing, and this pollen being powdery, it starts and light in weight, it sheds and fall, and stigma, which is very sticky, will attract. And now here what is happening, is it self-pollination or cross-pollination?
Cross.
Cross. Why is it cross, Aisha? Why is it cross-pollination? Why did you say that that was a cross-pollination, the picture which you saw?
The stigma is going from one plant to another plant.
Stigma, no, pollen.
Pollen.
Yeah. So you have seen the pollen of one flower falling on the stigma of some other flower. So that is the reason that was a typical example of cross-pollination. And even you have seen how the insects are also helping in cross-pollination. So the stigma secretes a stigma, you are seeing it's a female reproductive. It secretes some sticky nutrient fluid. It contains sugars and all those nutritic this thing, and then this pollen tube is formed. This pollen, this is stigma, and because of the chemical reactions and chemotactic force of attraction, you can see that this is through the style, in the ovary and the ovary, this pollen enters inside the ovule through this small channel. So could you see all these parts? Would you like to, because these are very important, you please draw them once and label the parts. Will you do it now? You have got 2 minutes left. Please draw quickly and post it in the WhatsApp group.